Let's say China.
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 China. China.
There are next door neighbors, and you can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska.
Go over to China.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Trump statement, tweeting out insults to Angela Merkel. What's he doing?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host.
Yes. Hello, and welcome. I am James Andrews, and you are listening to a very spooky Halloween edition of So This Happened, the only news you need if you are undead. Is that really the creepiest laugh we could find? That's awful. Shockingly bad. Anyway, to start today, I would like to play for you a television advert by the Democratic candidate for Virginia governor, Ralph Northam. Now, the Republicans are particularly angry with this advert. I think it's quite good, actually. So what I'll do is I'll play it and I'll sort of narrate to you what is happening over the top of it. It's really quite groovy. Okay, so starting off with two children walking down the street, a black kid and a Latino, and then there's a truck with a Confederate flag on the back of it, and it's chasing one of the kids, and he's running down the street, and the man inside is looking at the kid, and now he's taking a breather. The little girl playing basketball. Oh, the truck is coming around the corner again. The basketball, oh God, run, the kid says, and the kid with the basketball runs as well, and the truck has a big Gillespie bumper sticker on the back, and the kids are running down. They meet two other people, a Muslim girl and a black boy, and they run as well. And oh, it's very dramatic. They're running down an alley now. And there's the truck's follow. It's got a "Don't Tread on Me" license plate thing on the front. And, oh my God, they're going to lights! And the boy wakes up from a nightmare, and now his dad's comforting, and then
Is this what
they look
Donald Trump
worried.
and Ed Gillespie mean by the American dream? Latino Victory Fund paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
So, I can see why maybe the Republicans are getting a little bit bent out of shape by this, because it is quite controversial. It's in your face, but I think also it's because it's Halloween. This came out today, and it is scary. It's quite well made, though. You know, usually those political adverts are a bit shit. Sort of someone with a piece of paper, I paid for this advert, vote for him because he's brilliant. But it does bring up a number of points which people have been making recently, that the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, is perhaps no longer the party of Lincoln. I know this because I've seen pickup trucks like that with a big Confederate flag hanging out the back and a "Don't Tread on Me" sticker on it, and usually a Donald Trump president sticker on there as well, a MAGA sticker. So the Republicans are saying that's just not realistic. Well, it is realistic because I've seen it a lot. And the nightmare for George Papadopoulos continues. I was able to say it today. You see that? I practiced all night. I practiced so I would be able to say Papadopoulos correctly today. Because yesterday I was crap at it, but Papadopoulos. Yeah? You're welcome. Anyway, his luck of bad run has, continues. Donald Trump yesterday, after George came out saying that he was guilty of lying to the FBI, Donald Trump was strangely silent on Twitter. We heard not a peep. And I think what we were seeing there was Donald Trump was going, shit, somebody just turned against me. How dare they? I don't even know what to say. Well, today, he knew what to say. He described George Papadopoulos as a low-level volunteer and, wait for it, a liar. Yeah. Now, this is, remember, the guy that Donald Trump referred to as an excellent guy quite recently. But today, he was all out for blood. The entire tweet reads, "Few people knew the young low-level volunteer named George, who has already proven to be a liar. Check the Dems." again, we're back to checking the Dems because they colluded with Russia to win the election that they didn't win. Oh dear. So I have a feeling that George coming out yesterday and saying what he said really did knock Donald Trump for six. He sort of said, shit, I can't believe that. You know, because he can get past the whole Paul Manafort thing because he's not directly involved with that. But when somebody who was a campaign, as he says, a low-level volunteer. Now, you can look at photographs on the internet of Donald Trump and George Papadopoulos during the campaign. They seem quite friendly, and I'm not entirely sure if you're just a low-level campaign worker, you'd be having pictures with the president, right? Or the soon-to-be president. It doesn't seem particularly low-level to me, but maybe Donald Trump has a different idea of low-level volunteer. And somebody asked me yesterday if I would be dressing up in costume to record today's episode, and I'm here to report that I am in fact in costume right now. What I chose to wear this year is the Emperor's new clothes. They look fantastic. However, when I took a selfie and sent it to Mrs. Andrews, she said, James, you're naked. And I said, no, I'm wearing the Emperor's new clothes. And she said, no, you're naked, but you're British, so you have socks and shoes on. You look ridiculous. Put a towel on, please. So, I am sitting here with a towel wrapped around me and my shoes and my socks on in a sort of Emperor's new clothes sort of way. It feels quite refreshing, and there is an image that you probably don't need. But, it's breezy. I'll tell you that much. It is quite breezy. The air conditioner's blowing in the studio here, and it's, well, breezy. Now you have that image firmly embedded in your brains, I would like to talk about the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, who yesterday made remarks which have upset a number of people, and for good reason. Have a listen to what I mean.
Robert E. Lee was an honorable man. He was a man that gave up his country to fight for his state, which in 150 years ago was more important than country. It was always loyalty to state first back in those days. Now it's different today. But the lack of an ability to compromise led to the Civil War. And men and women of good faith on both sides made their stand.
Yeah, so it seems like the White House Chief of Staff is backing up the president's "there were good people on both sides" argument with the "there were good people on both sides of the Civil War." Now, the problem is with the statement, he sort of failed to mention the deep divide that was caused by slavery, which most historians argue was sort of the reason for the Civil War. Now, David Blight, who is the director of Yale University's Glider Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance and Abolition, said of the statement, "It shows the durability of certain mythologies and certain narratives that people don't want to give up. If you can say this and believe it, then you don't have to think about slavery." And I think he's onto something there, which is probably why he is a director of a Yale University program and I am not. But by General Kelly just coming out and saying, look, there were good people on both sides of the Civil War, and of course there were. Was every single person fighting in the South a complete dickhead? No, they were just young kids going out there to fight. But calling General Lee an honourable man, that's when you get into some sort of dicey waters a little bit. Because when you talk about General Lee, what you're talking about is the idea and the ideals that the Confederacy were fighting for. Now, the individual soldiers in the Confederacy, yeah, they were just kids out there doing what they were doing. It wasn't, they probably had no idea what they were fighting for, most of them. But when you look at the generals, they knew exactly what they were fighting for. To say he was an honourable man and all he did was put the state first rather than the country. But the problem is, that's not all he did. And people will kind of justify it. I was talking to somebody today about this when we heard about the Kelly thing, and this person, who I'm not going to mention, tried to justify it and said, no, General Kelly was a very honourable man. In fact, he didn't even have any slaves. He inherited them from his parents, but he freed them. long before the Civil War. And that sort of rhetoric is exactly what David Blight is talking about when he says if you can justify this in your head, saying, no, he was a very honourable man and he was just doing what he thought was right, you don't have to sort of mention the entire reason for the Civil War. And I know, I hear you yelling because I've heard this argument from many people. Well, Abraham Lincoln had slaves, he must be an evil man too. Well, Abraham Lincoln did have slaves, and that was fucked up. It was unfortunately the time he lived in. But the difference is, the ideal that Abraham Lincoln was fighting for was different to the ideal that General Lee was fighting for, and that is where that disconnect is. The good people on both sides argument doesn't hold water when you look at it that way. And of course, the real danger in Kelly's statement today is that this just further emboldens the white supremacists, who also probably have a very skewed view of what the Civil War was about, and to them it's all about white supremacy. So when you say there were good people on both sides and General Lee was an honourable man, you are once again legitimizing organizations like the Ku Klux Klan and the Nazis. And that is something that you should not do in 2017 America. And another danger I see with Kelly's statement is that he said people were fighting for their states, which was more important than fighting for their country. Well, what kind of message is that sending to people right now in, little backward states like Alabama or... no, just Alabama, because I love picking on Alabama, you know that. But you see what I'm saying? These little states that maybe want to say, oh, well, hell, if we were fighting for our states, General Kelly said we should fight for our states because that's more important than our country. So yay, Alabama, let's do this. And besides being a dangerous statement to make, it's also bullshit. Even the best General Lee biographers, the people who are massively sympathetic to him, acknowledge that General Lee was a Confederate nationalist. He knew exactly what the Confederacy was about. He knew that they were fighting to preserve a slaveholder republic. Pure and simple. General Lee knew exactly what he was doing. So, General Kelly, the good people on both sides argument, was bullshit and offensive when Donald Trump said it last month, and it is bullshit and offensive when you say it this month. And I know what you're thinking. I said this was a special Halloween episode of So This Happened, and we haven't had anything to do with Halloween except for this really weird music that's been playing throughout the entire background of the episode, which, why is that? Is there a reason? Because you had it was blocked from my headphones until I just heard it a moment ago. Yeah, I don't like it. Whatever, it's there. So that's it. That is the Halloween special part of this episode. It's that whatever the fuck is playing in the background right now. Ooh, creepy. And I feel like I should find something a little spooky to end with today, and well, I found something, and this comes from NASA, believe it or not. Today they released a number of recordings from space. These are literally the sound of space. Well, they're actually radio emissions from space, but they're really quite creepy. Have a listen to some of these. You see, I told you, they're quite creepy, aren't they? Well, except for that one in the middle that sounded like a star farting. You know the one I'm talking about? That one wasn't very creepy. That just sounded like a massive solar system fart. Anyway, we are out of time for today. So it was a good conversation as always. And if you're going out trick-or-treating this evening, stay safe. Make sure you check all your candy and fruit for razor blades. Because that's a true story. That happens every year. And rat poison. People love to put rat poison in candy. Happens all the time. All the time. Anyway, listen, have a great night, and we'll do this all again tomorrow. And please let someone you love know about this podcast so that they can listen to it. Or if you absolutely fucking hate it, let someone you despise know about this podcast so they can also be miserable. Take care. Good night.